What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is October 19th of 2023, and today I want to explain to you exactly what a 15-minute city is, the pros and cons, and why it actually is extremely relevant for everybody around the world, but specifically the United States and, well, the Western nations. So, coming up, Grand Rapids, Michigan has a workshop on um, the Bridge to Our Future, visualizing outcomes for the community master plan update that is happening. Now, this update, again, is happening in Grand Rapids, but it's happening in a city near you, I can guarantee you. If you type in the keywords master plan, vision, workshop, and then whatever county you're in or the city near you, it depends on how big the township is, but townships are also getting master plan updates as well. It also depends on if development is coming to your area. Like Green Charter Township, Goshen is coming to their area, and so they're talking about creating a master plan. And so it's important for all of us to understand exactly how this master plan is created and how these workshops are actually conducted and why they are being conducted. So again, I'm doing pros and cons. And then we have real world example of implementation happening in Oxford, London, UK right now as we speak. So we can see what these plans are actually going to mean in our day-to-day life. Everybody is going to be affected by this. Everybody needs to understand this. It doesn't matter if you're from Michigan or not. I use Grand Rapids as an example, and again, I'm using Oxford as an example as well. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me, Dragonfly. I appreciate you hanging out. I'm hoping that I can convey all the information. I have hours and hours and hours into this, and so I know my videos are long, but I try to condense all of the information that I see into these videos. But all this information is really important because it's a web, and so you can't understand one thing without knowing, 5 to 10 other things to really understand the topic. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and share. Whoops, add to stage. There we go. Let's get down here. So community master plan updates, Bridge to the Future, visualizing outcomes. The next round of Bridge to Our Future workshops is November 14th to the 16th. Help shape the future of Grand Rapids. We're creating a new community master plan that will define the vision of how our city will grow and develop over the next 20 years. It's very important to get into these plans and see what the city near you has in store because it will directly affect everybody. These meetings are all about visualizing outcomes. They will cover topics such as housing, economic development, and transportation, and we'll dive deeper into the public input gathered earlier this year. Each meeting will provide an opportunity to give feedback in an interactive setting. And I'm going to go into exactly what you can expect if you go to one of these meetings and what's really going on with these meetings. So real quick, just a couple things. This is Austin, Texas, Zilker Park Vision Plan. You can see Vision Master Plan. I just typed in Master Plan Vision Workshop Austin, and then several things came up. So I'm just showing different. This is Illinois Master Planning Visioning Workshop for the Mid-Illinois Medical District, downtown Springfield, Illinois. This is Parks and Recreation Master Plan Vision. So this is North Carolina. Again, I'm just showing you, it doesn't matter. The Vision Russell, this is, I think, Austin as well. Neighborhood Initiative. Going to talk about neighborhood associations. And I'm sure that a lot of your cities have the same thing. This is City of Grand Rapids, the Office of Sustainability. We started our sustainability journey around 2005. Right when that financial crisis was going on, which I think was actually the beginning of the Great Reset, was back then. I mean, I've been looking into it. People's property was stolen. It's crazy. By the banks. The banks stole a lot of people's property. Excuse me. As a municipality, it's important for us to understand how our work impacts entire systems, communities, and the environment. Entire systems, what they're doing. I come down here, and this is Allison Sutter, Sustainability and Performance Management Officer. You'll see her name several times, but I'm sure, again, your city has something like this. I recommend everybody look and see exactly who's involved: environmental and climate justice specialists. And, a lot of this sounds like it could be good, but when the government comes to help whatever community it is, it's never good. Promise you that. So you come over here. This is another individual that you will see her name. And I just thought it was interesting. She's got a PhD in environmental geography, and she went to Moscow State University. Now you go to Moscow State University website and you type in sustainable, and you can see that in their institutions, in their educational institutions over there in Russia, sustainable development is absolutely involved. So Russia, China, they're all implementing United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Goals. I want everybody to keep that in mind. This is another individual you'll see that you just saw, actually, the Office of Sustainability. So Allison Sutter, 2020, she was hired. She joins the state's first ever Environmental Justice Council. So heavily involved in all these plans, and when it comes to climate change, sustainability, they're all interchangeable keywords in a way. Like they all connect in the web. So the next thing I'd like to show you is, or rather share with you, is exactly what a 15-minute city is. So this came out April 30th of 2021. Old-fashioned, compact, convenient, mixed-use development for a modern, post-pandemic, walkable world. So there's several keywords in here that you should keep in mind when it comes to United Nations Agenda 21. Mixed-use development and walkable are both some keywords that you can use when you're looking at your own master plan. Multimodal, we're going to see a lot of that too. That was in Maui, Maui's master plan, and Hawaii, the state of Hawaii's master plan. You could see all those same keywords: walkable, multimodal, mixed use development. It's in all of them. The 15-minute city harkens back to an era when the predominant mode of travel was by foot, and people could meet most of their needs within a 15-minute walk of their residence. The concept, introduced by Colombian-French scientist Carlos Moreno and being rapidly implemented by socialist Paris mayor Anne Hidalgo, has taken root in many urban areas around the world, including the United States. So you see, you have the socialist and movement involved in rapid growing and urbanizing Charlotte, North Carolina. It's the 10-minute neighborhood. In Louisiana, with more small and medium cities spread out and developed to suburban standards, the goal is the 20-minute neighborhood. Ann Arbor is also going to be a 20-minute neighborhood. Whether the goal is focused on increasing a mix of uses and amenities citywide or in the key neighborhoods, the 15-minute concept emphasizes meeting all needs on foot, via bicycle, or by using public transit. You don't see car at all in here, which is the main point, is to get rid of private vehicles. Because areas that are amenity, activity, and transit rich tend to become very expensive to live and work in, many cities are grappling with how they can ensure equity, inclusion, and accessibility in these economically powerful zones. See the Inclusion, Equity, and Accessibility, Ensuring the 15-Minute City Serves All article. And that's another thing. No one will be left behind. Xi Jinping says it in his speeches that you can read online. No one will be left behind. No country will be left behind. The United Nations says the same thing. Our government, you can hear it all over the place. No one will be left behind. That's supposed to be, a good thing, but really that just means that no one will be able to live how they want. They will have to adhere to these plans. The 15-minute concept emphasizes meeting all needs on foot, via bicycle, or using public transit. They even put it in the major quotation here. They want you to know that's the 15-minute concept emphasizes on foot, bicycle, or public transit. No private vehicles. For decades, smart growth policy. There's another keyword: smart growth. The movement of new urbanism, more keywords, and other policies have tried to steer cities away from the high cost of sprawl and car ownership. The pandemic has accelerated the trend towards creating more pedestrian and bike space, ensuring each neighborhood has open park recreation space and greening streetscapes, and more to create a healthy environment that fights obesity and other diseases contributed to by car-dominated lifestyles. So they're not blaming diet or anything else. They're blaming car-dominated lifestyles for obesity. They're not blaming locking people in their home and literally tackling people on the beach when they're running and nobody's around them and forcing them to go back to their house. That isn't why there's obese people and their own choices to eat and everything else. No, it's car-dominated lifestyles. The rapid response needed to cope with COVID-19 has given many urban cores the opportunity to quickly convert traffic lanes into pedestrian bike space. It's almost as if COVID-19 was really, really good for warp speeding the plans of the central planners, the people that have this vision of the anointed. Like, this is just so convenient. This offered an opportunity. Since there weren't any cars on the street, we got to paint one of those 2 lanes into a bike lane. It's crazy. To cope with social distancing while preserving Main Street business, the transformation has often been at a warp speed pace. I didn't even have it highlighted. I read so fast. The warp speed pace. Operation Warp Speed, yes, in more ways than one. Compared to the usual array of public hearings and months of review by myriad agencies. So the checks and balances that we have got bypassed thanks to COVID-19 emergencies, which we all know. And all our freedoms got bypassed too. Using only paint and screw and markers, nearly 100 miles of Parisian roads were temporarily reallocated to cyclists in the early months of the pandemic, a revolution in urban reprogramming. It was later announced that the changes would become permanent, wrote Carlo Ratti, co-founder of the International Design and Innovation Office Associati and director of the Sensible City Lab at MIT, and Richard Florida, professor of the University of Toronto's School of Cities and Rotman School of Management Project Syndicate. So Morono, father of the 15-minute city and Hidalgo's special envoy for smart cities, is scientific director and professor specializing in complex systems and innovation at Paris Pantheon Sorbonne University. Cities should be designed or redesigned so that within the distance of a 15-minute walk or bike ride, people should be able to live the essence of what constitutes the urban experience. To access work, housing, food, health, education, culture, and leisure, he said. Welcome, Connie. Good morning. I think I'm late. Oh, you're fashionably late. It's totally cool. I'm just getting into the meat and potatoes of what a 15-minute city is exactly. And this is from a website that, is pro 15-minute city. So they're just giving you the facts of what this 15-minute city is all about. Come down here. While Paris, which developed long before the car was a primary means of transportation, already is a 15-minute city due to a large degree. Morino points out that it still benefits from turning parking lots into greenery, making traffic circles pedestrian and bike friendly, and decentralizing the city. I love how they use that, because that decentralizing is what I want, but the way they want to use decentralizing is much different. They want to centralize, but call it decentralization. It's, again, the upside down. That means more medical centers spread through the neighborhoods and affordable housing introduced into wealthy neighborhoods, so support workers don't have to live far outside the centers. He said Paris is committed to creating much more social housing to allow people to age in place. No moving for you. No going out of the 15 minutes. To combat gentrification and to create rental properties for low-income workers. He said government also must take an active role in preserving mom-and-pop commerce. Again, anytime government comes to help you, you better run, because they're not going to help you. They're going to destroy you and make you subservient, or rather, dependent on them. That's what they want. When they say, we're going to come help, they're trying to get you as completely dependent upon them as possible so they can tell you what you need to do. And you're going to have to, because you're dependent on them. That's why we need to combat that by being as self-sufficient as possible, because they want us to be dependent. You don't do what they want. People live in the suburbs not because they are stupid, but because of cheaper space outside the city center. If you force them to own within 15 minutes of where they work, they are priced out. He said, if you discourage commuting from farther out, their economic opportunity is cut off. I don't know why I highlighted that people live in the suburbs not because they are stupid, as if people think that you live in the suburbs, you're stupid, like you live there because you're stupid. Like, who thinks that? I don't know. It was weird to me how they said that. Breach said he is skeptical that urban planning alone can produce equity. And equity we're going to have to get into because it's important to understand exactly what they mean by equity. He said not all good jobs can be available to all people within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. Breach said if car congestion and pollution is a problem, vehicles and driving should be taxed at a higher rate. And transit could be expanded by making it more profitable via land development rights around stations. Again, this is all about land development rights. In the end, that's what it's about. Charlotte, consistently one of the fastest growing cities in the US, is creating a 2040 vision plan, a comprehensive approach to land use, transit, diversity, equity, and dozens of issues related to the city of nearly 900,000 that is predicted to swell in population by upwards of 400,000 residents in the next 2 decades. We've got right now a zoning code that is 1,000 pages. We want to reduce that number so you can read the comprehensive plan and understand the focus on creating 10-minute neighborhoods, he said. Some will have less density, some higher density, but regardless of where you are, you will be able to walk to different things such as childcare, schools, healthcare, job services that meet daily needs. So far, everything sounds great, right? I mean, besides the fact that you have less lanes to drive in and you don't have private cars, but you have everything that you want and need close to you. It sounds like it could be good. I'm trying to give the benefit over there. It sounds good, but the implementation that we're going to get into is the problem. Charlotte's Canopy Realtor Association is working with staff, city staff, and elected officials to help guide the 2040 plan. Canopy, which is working with several Charlotte builders and commercial realtor groups, has stated while we support many of the concepts being proposed, we are concerned about the costs and the impact of unintended consequences. That is because it's a private entity and not the government. They actually care and know that there are unintended consequences whenever you have more regulations and whenever you have a top-down approach. That's the problem with this whole thing for me, is that it's a top-down approach. They have a plan, they're pushing it on us. You didn't vote for this. Retail, already hurting because you can get everything delivered, has taken a hit from the pandemic, he said, and I think this is an opportunity for commercial brokers to turn a lot of retail space into mixed use with multifamily. Once again, an excellent benefit of locking us all in our home. All the office buildings, they're about to collapse. The real estate is about to collapse when it comes to commercial. And they're going to be bought in mass. It's already happened. And they're going to be bought in mass and turned into mixed use, like tenement housing. And the bottom level, it's called mixed use, but the bottom level is a shop, and we're going to be stacked on top of each other in little sustainable apartments. I guess you could call them apartments. A little box where you have a bathroom, you have a tiny kitchen, you have everything you need, but you're living in, 250 to 400 square feet. That is what's happening in a lot of cities. I mean, basically it's like China. That's kind of what they're bringing us to. This person said the city's 2040 plan is founded on an equitable growth framework. And in Louisiana, we got a 20-minute neighborhood, Louisiana working with key stakeholders, the realtors, to support complete streets and access for all. Mora said revitalization replaces blight and allows stores to stay open later, improving business revenue because people feel safe on the street. So, by the way, I will not be able to get to all of the videos that I think you should watch. So please check the description for further reading and watching after this video, because it's really important, again, that you understand what's going on in the neighborhood, city, county near you. Right here, a trend I expect will grow among cities changing their zoning to allow more missing, middle, and walkable urban infill development, the kind conducive to a 15-minute neighborhood, is that of building density or floor area ratio. Bonuses into the zoning specifically for affordable units. The current gold standard for this with small-scale development is Portland, which passed its residential infill program last fall.
An analysis conducted by the city in consultation with several small-scale and affordable housing developers. Okay, so basically the density of floor area ratio, the floor area ratio is what I was just talking about. They're going to be tiny because if you have a lot of people that are going to be living in the cities, then you need to have a lot of different housing. Grand Rapids taps Planning Next to help plan for growth, December 15th of 2022. In light of this, Grand Rapids has engaged Planning Next. So they all have a third party that comes in, then they have facilitators in that third party, and they are the ones that host these meetings. And again, we're going to get into exactly what these meetings entail. Grand Rapids has engaged Planning Next to lead a best-in-class team of sub-consultants, including Sidewalk Detroit, the Nini Gret Partners, Interface Studio, Sam Schwartz, on and on. So this last plan was completed over 20 years ago, and while it has served the city well, it's time to build on that success to develop a plan that addresses current needs and priorities. The city is increasingly diverse, young, and educated, presenting unique opportunities for the future. Right, diverse, young, and educated. Educated being, unfortunately, learned in the ways of sustainable development because of the UN Decade for Sustainable Development. So these individuals have been propagandized, and that's why there's unique opportunities for the future that they're discussing. And again, I have nothing against these individuals. I really hope that they will hear me out and just see what I'm talking about here. Housing continues to be a major focus for the city, and new guidelines related to housing will be developed as part of this planning process. Importantly, therefore, the 24-month process, branded as Building Our Future, will take a more international look at equity and how the city can develop in a way that helps lift up all residents. Besides managing the overall effort, Planning Next will focus on developing the land use strategy, as well as leading the overall engagement strategy in partnership with Sidewalk Detroit. A representative steering committee has been established, which will play a critical role in guiding the process and be central to outreach to and engagement of the larger community. Planning Next is excited to lead this important effort for the city of Grand Rapids. So I'm going to read very quickly. I think that this is extremely important for everybody to understand. And this comes out of the United Nations Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21 by Rosa, Koire. I would highly recommend you pick it up. It's only on ebook right now for $10, which is not the best, but unfortunately, that's the only way to pick it up right now. So, what is UN Agenda 1 and why UN Agenda 21 and why should I care? Why it matters to the 15-minute city? Have you wondered where these terms sustainability and smart growth and high density urban mixed use development came from? Doesn't it seem that about 10 years ago you'd never heard of them, and now everything seems to include these buzzwords? By the way, this was in 2011 this was written. So when I read this stuff to you and then you see these plans that I go through, it's happening. Everything that she was talking about is taking place. It's crazy. And if you care about identity politics, this individual, it was a female lesbian Democrat. She created the website Democrats Against UN Agenda 21.com. And so if you care about that type of thing, like she's not who you like a typical, you think alt-right. That's what they say this is, this truth that I'm trying to share with you. But it's not alt-right. It's just what the plans are. She just saw the pattern and exposed it. And she was a brilliant woman. I'm sorry that she's gone. She unfortunately passed away 2021. But yeah, we need her and we don't have her. Every town and county and state and nation in the world would be changing their land use planning code and government policies to align themselves with what? First, before I get going, I want to say that yes, I know it really is a small world and we're all one planet, etc. I also know that we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that as cumbersome as that can be sometimes, Donald Rumsfeld said that the Chinese have it easy. They don't have to ask their people if they agree. And Bush Jr. said that it would be great to have a dictator as long as he was the dictator. We have a 3-branch government, and the Bill of Rights, Constitution, and self-determination is one of the reasons why people want to come to the U.S. This is one of the reasons why people want to come to the United States, right? We don't have Tiananmen Square here, generally speaking, so I'm not against making certain issues a priority, such as mindful energy use, alternative energy sponsorship, recycling, reuse, and sensitivity to all living creatures. But then you have UN Agenda 21. What is it? Considering its policies are woven into all of the general plans of the cities and counties in the United States, it's important for people to know where these policies are coming from. While many support the United Nations for its peacemaking efforts, few know that it has very specific land use policies that it wants implemented in every city, county, state, and nation. The specific plan is called UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, which has its basis in communitarianism. By now, most Americans have heard of sustainable development, but are largely unaware of UN Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. In a nutshell, the plan calls for governments to take control of all land use and not leave any of the decision-making in the hands of private property owners. It is assumed that people are not good stewards of the land, and the government will do a better job if it is in control. Individual rights in general are to give way to the needs of communities as determined by a globalist governing body. Moreover, people should be rounded up off the land and packed into settlements of islands or islands of human habitation, as they are called in the United Nations Agenda 21 documents, close to employment centers and transportation. Does that sound familiar? Transportation and employment centers. Another program called the Wildlands Project, it's now called America the Beautiful. You can look into it. Biden just renamed it, it got a revamp. The Wildlands Project spells out how most of the land is to be set aside for non-humans. It's also the reason we have a war on dams, which I will get into on Monday. In anticipation of our objections to such plans, our civil rights will be dissolved. UN Agenda 21 cites the affluence of Americans as being a major problem which needs to be corrected. It calls for lowering the standard of living for Americans so that the people in poorer countries will have more, a redistribution of wealth. Although people around the world aspire to achieve the levels of prosperity we have in our country and will risk their lives to get here, Americans are cast in a very negative light and will be taken down to a condition closer to average in the world. Only then will there be social justice, which is a cornerstone of the UN Agenda 21 plan. UN Agenda 21 policies date back to the 1970s, but it got its real start in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio, when President Bush signed onto it along with the leaders of 178 other countries. Because it is a soft law, it did not have to be ratified by the Congress. The following year, President Clinton began to implement it by creating the President's Council on Sustainable Development, PCSD, made up of cabinet-level government officials, captains of industry, including Ken Lay of Enron, and nonprofit groups such as the Sierra Club. One of the first tasks of the PCSD was to give a multi-million-dollar grant to the American Planning Association to design a legislative guidebook to be used as a blueprint for every city, county, and state in the United States in order to implement UN Agenda 21. This document, called Growing Smart Legislative Guidebook, Model Statutes for Planning and the Management of Change, took 7 years to complete and a full 9 years to arrive at the final version. I know somebody that went to school for city planning. They had to use that book in order to learn. So everybody learned from that book on how to plan a city. Education is so important. It's amazing. So the document, yes, it took 7 years to complete and a full 9 years to arrive at the final version. The guidebook, and it's not just a guidebook, but a blueprint, contains sample legislation, ordinance, rules, regulations, and statutes to be incorporated into general plans of every single city and county in the United States. By 2002, every planning department and every local, state, and federal department that governs land use had a copy and was implementing the practices. Every university, every college, every junior college, private school, and teaching institution in our nation was using Growing Smart in its curriculum. Sound familiar? Growing Smart is smart growth. A non-governmental organization called the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI, which my first video on Grand Rapids was get a warning that you're an ICLEI city, is tasked with carrying out the goals of UN Agenda 21 locally. Over 600 cities and counties in the US are members. The costs are paid by taxpayers. We're paying for our own enslavement, and I'm going to prove it. Okay, you say that's interesting, but I don't see how that really affects me. Here are a few ways. No matter where you live, I'll bet that there have been hundreds of condos built or planned in the center of your town recently. Over the next 10 years, there has been a planning revolution across the US. It was the implementation of growing smart. Your commercial, industrial, and multi-residential land was rezoned to mixed use. Nearly everything that got approvals for development was designed the same way. Ground floor retail with 2 or 3 stories of residential above. Mixed use. Very hard to finance for construction, and very hard to manage since it has to have a high density of people in order to justify the retail. We have a high density of homeless now, so it will justify the retail. A lot of it is empty, and most of the ground floor retail is empty too. High bankruptcy rate. So what? Most of your towns provided funding or infrastructure development for these private projects, which we know, if you've been here any length of time, the MEDC gives tons of money to all of these mixed-use housing. They used redevelopment agency funds, your money, my money, specifically your property taxes. Notice how there's very little money in your general funds now, and most of that is going to pay police and fire. Your streetlights are off, your parks are shaggy, your roads are potholed, your county hospitals are closing. We're seeing that in mass. County hospitals are closing. The money that should be used for these things is diverted into redevelopment agency for 30 years. It's the only agency in government that can float a bond without a vote of the people. And they did that. And now you're paying off those bonds for the next 30 to 45 years with your property taxes. Did you know that? This woman is a genius. She did 30 years in eminent domain evaluation. She knew what she was talking about, and she tried to warn us. Redevelopment is a tool used to further the Agenda 21 vision of remaking America's cities. With redevelopment, cities have the right to take property by eminent domain against the will of the property owner and give it or sell it to a private developer. By declaring an area of town blighted, which I'm sure you've heard, and in some cities, over 90% of the city area has been declared blighted. The property taxes in that area are diverted away from the general fund. This construction of available funds is impoverishing the cities, forcing them to offer less and less services and reducing your standard of living and mine. They'll be telling you that it's better, however, since they've put in nice streetlights and colored paving downtown. The money gets redirected into the redevelopment agency and handed out to favored developers, building low-income housing and mixed use. Does that not sound exactly like what the MEDC is doing? And this, again, 2011, she wrote this. Smart growth. Cities have had thousands of condos built in redevelopment areas and are telling you that you are terrible for wanting your own yard, for wanting privacy, for not wanting to be dictated to by a condo homeowners association board, for being antisocial, for not going along to get along, for not moving into a cramped, overpriced apartment downtown where they can use your property taxes for paying off that huge bond debt. But it's not working, and you don't want to move there, so they have to make you. Read on. A little bit more in this, and then I have more to share with you. I'm sorry, but this is just so important. She lays it out exactly what's going on when we look at these plans. It's crazy. Human habitation, as it is referred to now, is restricted to lands within the urban growth boundaries of the city. Urban growth is capitalized here because it's part of the city's planning commissions. Yes. Kathy, I'm going to pull this up. We are financially graped by these organizations, Rise Up People. And I'm sorry, I should just say the word, but I am being censored all the time, or not censored, but my video, when I say certain words, I'm sorry. But yes, you are absolutely right. They are destroying us. We are paying for our own enslavement, or we're paying for our own prison bars. Yeah, so I'm about to get to this. This is all so important, but the bicycle she's about to talk about, it's so relevant. So only certain building designs are permitted. Rural property is more and more restricted in what uses can be on it. Although counties say that they support agricultural uses, eating locally produced foods, farmers markets, etc., in fact, there are so many regulations restricting water and land use. There are scenic corridors, inland rural corridors, bayland corridors, area plans, specific plans, redevelopment plans, huge fees, fines, that farmers are losing their lands altogether. County roads are not being paved. The push is for people to get off of the land, become more dependent, come into the cities, to get out of the suburbs and into the cities, out of their private homes and into condos, out of their private cars and onto bikes. Bikes. What does that have to do with it? I like to ride my bike, and so do you. So what? Bicycle advocacy groups are very powerful now. Oh, they're more powerful now than even in 2011. Advocacy, a fancy word for lobbying, influencing, and maybe strong arming the public and politicians. What's the connection with bike groups? National groups such as Complete Streets, Thunderhead Alliance, and others have training programs teaching their members how to pressure for redevelopment and training candidates for office. It's not just about bike lanes, it's about remaking cities and rural areas to the sustainable model. High-density urban development without parking for cars is the goal. They call them transit villages. This means that whole towns need to be demolished and rebuilt in the image of sustainable development. Bike groups, often dominated by testosterone-laden zealots, are being used as the shock troops for this plan. Her words, not mine, but when I go on the Dragon Trail, I will say it's a majority of men going way fast, and they're supposed to yield to walkers, but if you stay on the path as a walker, you'll get ran over. They just usually they have a little bell, shing, shing, get out of my way, and they fly past you. Anyway, what plan? We're losing our homes since this depression began, and many of us could never afford those homes to begin with. We got cheap money, used whatever we had to squeak into those homes, and now some of us lost them because this was 2011, so it was shortly after the first financial earthquake. We were lured, indebted, and sunk. Whole neighborhoods are empty in some places. Right now, the first time ever, 280 blocks, I believe, in FLINT was just bought up by one developer, bought up huge swath of land in FLINT. So it's happening again. It happened then, it's happening again. Some are being bulldozed. Cities cannot afford to extend services outside of their core areas. Slowly, people will not be able to afford single-family homes, will not be able to afford private cars, will be more independent, more restricted, more easily watched and monitored. And so one more paragraph, I'm sorry, because it talks about the Delphi technique. This plan is a whole life plan. It involves the educational system, the energy market, the transportation system, the governmental system, the healthcare system, food production, and more. It is a plan to inventory and control all of the natural resources, means of production, and human beings in the world. That's why digital ID is a thing, and it's totally a part of the UN agenda. The plan is to restrict your choices. In fact, Sustainable Development Goal 16 is the one that digital ID is under. The plan is to restrict your choices, limit your funds, narrow your freedoms, and take away your voice. One of the ways is by using the Delphi technique to manufacture consensus. So that's what's happening at these visionary workshops. It is to manufacture consensus, to make us feel like we were involved, but I'm going to get into how it's all just an illusion, because that's how these people work, is illusions. Another is to infiltrate community groups or actually start neighborhood associations with hand-picked leaders. Another is to groom and train future candidates for local offices. Another method is to sponsor non-governmental groups that go into schools and train children. Another is to offer federal and private grants and funding for local programs that further the agenda. Another is to educate a new generation of land use planners to require new urbanism. Another is to convert factories to other uses. introduce energy measures that penalize manufacturing, and set energy consumption goals to pre-1985 levels. And another is to allow unregulated immigration in order to lower standards of living and drain local resources. Again, please pick this book up, even if it is just a digital copy. She goes on in great detail for 163 pages. It is longer than that, but then she shares her personal story of trying to fight the UN agenda in California, San Francisco Bay. And unfortunately, she did not succeed, but she certainly tried. And that's all we can do, right? We have to try. So let's get into this article really quick, and I will be getting into Grand Rapids, the actual strategic plan and some of the wording in that. But again, for everybody to be on the same page on the pros and cons of the 15-minute city and what is happening, I wanted to get into this. 15-minute cities are a working class nightmare. A car-free lifestyle is only possible for those whose profession and income permit it. Is there a global conspiracy to confine people to 15-minute cities? By the way, you type in 15-minute city and pretty much every single article claims that it's just a conspiracy theory. But I showed you an article that the 15-minute city concept is far from a conspiracy theory. It's a real thing that's being implemented in cities. And so when they say that, they're kind of gaslighting. But I digress. At the recent UK local elections, and again, Oxford is the first city that's doing this. So we need to look at them and see exactly how it's being implemented and what's going on there, how it's going. Which, spoiler alert, it's not going very good. I guess it depends on who you ask. So at recent UK local election, MPs and councillors heard this message from voters: the commitment of a growing number of cities such as Bristol, Ipswich, London, Birmingham, and Oxford to limit car usage in particular districts and neighborhoods has been seized upon by the paranoid as further evidence of a great reset directed by the economic elites of Davos that uses climate change as an excuse for social regimentation. In Parliament, the Conservative MP Nick Fletcher denounced the 15-minute city as an international socialist concept. So most articles are going to, again, they're going to skew the 15-minute city as crazy conspiracy theory. And so that's what we're getting. But it doesn't matter because there is good information in here that we can discern for ourselves what is BS and what's good info. It may not be international socialism, but the concept has been embraced by many on the center left. It is a socialist concept. The person who is implementing it in Paris is socialist, including the C4 Cities Climate Leadership Group. Comprised of nearly 100 city governments around the world, in a 15-minute city, everyone is able to meet most, if not all, of their needs within a short walk or bike ride from their home. Although the name is new, the concept is not. A recurrent goal of urban reformers, from proponents of the Garden City in the 1900s to advocates of transit-oriented development in the late 20th century, has been the creation of car-free, village-like environments in which most places could be accessed on foot or on bicycles, with mass transit for longer journeys. The idea of a 15-minute city sounds appealing. Who wouldn't want to have everything they need? Exactly. Work, healthcare, education, shops, leisure, within a short walk of their front door. Sounds great. But only brief reflection is needed to demonstrate how impractical the idea is. Consider work. The majority of Americans in the private sector work for companies with more than 500 employees. Some of these firms, such as coffee house and drugstore chains, may have establishments. It would be hard to get to work. Mere access to public transport is not enough. A Brookings Institution study found that only around 30% of potential jobs were accessible to American urban residents using mass transit, even with 90-minute commutes each way. Experimental voucher programs by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development showed that low-income workers with access to cars were twice as likely to get jobs and 4 times as likely to remain employed. Cars are good. Except in a few of the world's densest cities, such as New York, Tokyo, and Paris, public transport is no substitute for the speed and convenience of point-to-point travel in an individual vehicle. Then there is retail. This is a reason why in the U.S. and other countries, big box stores with bargain prices are located on cheap suburban or exurban land. You may be able to walk to a grocery or chemist in your city, chemist, pharmacist. But thanks to high land prices and property taxes, the local corner store is likely to have limited space and fewer, more expensive groceries. Housing spaces, too, will be limited in a 15-minute city. No matter how much urban journalists glamorize micro apartments and minimalism, most people in Western democracies prefer commuting to their workplace and shopping centers and having bigger homes with more room to accommodate children, relatives, pets, and possessions. Exactly. We don't want to live in a tiny box, but that's how they want us to live. Oh, I do have more. If cars and trucks are banished from the pedestrian village, how are medics and ambulances to get to victims of heart attacks? How are the infirm elderly to be taken by relatives and friends to medical appointments? Groceries might be taken home from corner stores in small quantities every day if you think daily shopping is one of the pleasures of life, which I don't. I go once every 2 weeks if I can get away with it. But how are beds, sofas, tables, and bookcases to be moved in and out of houses or apartments if rented or hired trucks and vans cannot get close? One solution is to limit the vehicles allowed into a neighborhood to those who live and work there, and to necessary service vehicles. But such neighborhoods already exist. They are called gated communities, and most of them are in enclaves for the affluent and the rich. The term mixed use is frequently found in the literature of urban utopianism. What about mixed class? Class mixing through urban design is another idea that seems appealing until it is remembered that in pre-modern societies, aristocrats, and patricians, servants, and tradespeople often lived under the same roof without physical proximity, reducing social distance. In modern societies, the wealthy spend considerable amounts to be surrounded by wealthy neighbors, apart from the occasional live-in servant and visiting service providers. So, in 2010, New York City reformed zoning laws to encourage luxury apartment complexes that included affordable housing for low-income residents. I didn't know this. Thus originated the poor door, an entrance for the poor residents separate from the main entrance for the affluent apartment dwellers, the 21st century version of the tradesman entrance in an old-fashioned country house. So yeah, in 2010, not too long ago, they had a poor door. The point may be moot because most working class people in Europe and America live in the suburbs. Okay. In the 20th century, the factory was the site of the most intense class conflict. In the 21st century, it is the automobile. In France, the longest running protests of the Second World War began in 2019 with a nationwide protest against a fuel tax hike, the Yellow Vest protest, which got shut down when 2020 hit, unfortunately. There was a lot of protests against government control happening right before 2020, and then everything got shut down, and now it's starting to come up again, and unfortunately, they don't like that, so they're going to do something. War. It looks like right now World War III, and I don't want that, obviously. But they're going to do something in order to break up the people that are starting to get together, like the Yellow Vest protests in France. And they're very good at protesting in France. But there was that movement, and they got broken up. But itself, it was a symbolic gesture that would do little to alter climate change, but impose real costs on suburban workers and businesses, right? That fuel tax hike did. So that's what they were protesting about. They lived out in the country, driving in the city because they were pushed out. In the city, it's too expensive to live. And now you're going to put a tax on us? It's crazy. But that's exactly what's happening with the implementation of the 15-minute city. It is a tax on the poor. And we're going to get into that. Many metropolitan progressives have sought to claim that these protests were, if not sinister far-rightists, petite bourgeoisie, not generally working class, but the reclassification of many workers who would have been employees in the past as contractors by businesses seeking to minimize labor costs has created a growing precariat of people who are nominally self-employed but part of the working class by sensible definition. Even paranoids have real enemies. There's no Davos conspiracy to confine everyone in 15-minute concentration camp. No, here's the thing. They never say that, and maybe their intention isn't. But the problem is the implementation of these plans that they have leads to a 15-minute concentration camp. And I'm going to show you because, again, the UK is going through it right now. They have a thing called Blade Runners in the UK. It's a whole new group that is destroying cameras. Majority of working class people of all races whose suburban lifestyles depend on cars to get them to work, shops, and homes can be forgiven for being resentful of environmental regulations whose cost falls on them, rather than on upscale professionals and pleasant urban enclaves. Every utopian urban plan has a social address. The 15-minute city is an overclass dream and a working class nightmare. So I don't think they got everything right, but that last sentence was absolutely right, because the people that have money, they kept using the water in 2021 in Las Vegas. The poor people couldn't use their water because they would be fined $100. You can't afford $100 when you're poor, a fine. But if you're wealthy, what's $100? And therefore, you have class you have consequences to the lower class, not the upper class. The surprising stickiness of the 15-minute city. The historical roots of the 15-minute city are connected deeply with the current moment, one we will be living with for a long time to come. World Economic Forum is saying this. So I figured they're talking about Davos. Davos is talking about the 15-minute city. The obvious yet incomplete answer is the pandemic. Would Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo have pushed for progressive urban design without this framing? Undoubtedly. But with COVID-19 and its variants keeping everyone home, or closer to home than usual, the 15-minute city went from nice to have to a rallying cry. At least that's what they think. The term was coined in 2016 by Professor Carlos Marino, who was given Nobel Award in 2021 for developing the idea. This award is all about sustainable development. Historically, most cities grew up around trade, which developed into more permanent places of commerce. Cities reduced transportation costs for goods and people by bringing them closer together. By reducing these costs, cities increased productivity and thus further evolved the city as a multiplier of culture and innovation. As Aristotle said, the city-state comes into being for the sake of living, but exists for the sake of living well. More than a century after the adaptation of automobiles as the dominant mode of transportation, work still dictated urban geography with increasingly longer commutes. Suburbia, the antithesis of the 15-minute city, couldn't exist without proximity to economic urban engine. So they're calling it right here. The suburbs and that whole design is the antithesis of the 15-minute city. It's got to go. This is the 15-minute city idea right here, where this is your home and everything you could ever want is within 15 minutes. Again, it sounds just lovely. Unfortunately, what it means in reality is not. Indeed, the decentralization of work is not going to kill the city. It's going to save it. There will be a lot of creative destruction along the way, but that is how the city renews itself from within. They're saying it right there. The destruction will come from within. That's how it renews, like a phoenix. But the cities that don't decentralize work will struggle mightily in ways both known and unimaginable. Sounds pretty scary. As climate change and global conflict causes shocks and stresses at faster intervals, increasing severity, the 15-minute city will become even more critical. Anyone who has followed Eric's work knows that resilience is rooted in place. Specifically, communities that foster and maintain social and economic relationships don't have to be wealthy, but they do need to be walkable and safe, with both residential and commercial buildings intact. And I would add, for 15-minute cities to thrive, not just survive crises, and this cannot be stressed enough, they must also have plenty of mixed income and equitable housing, as well as digital access. All right, so you come here, you see Zero Cities Project. 2017, the city of Grand Rapids is one of 12 cities selected to participate in the Zero Cities Project to develop an actionable and equitable roadmap to achieve zero net carbon building sector by 2050. Where do you think the 2030 and the 2050 and even the 2040? That's all part of a plan. So what's the plan? The Zero Cities Project was based on having a policy process informed by technical analysis that will include community collaboration and focus on equity. In partnership with Architecture 2030, was completed a baseline building assessment of buildings in Grand Rapids that showed our main areas of focus were single-family homes and commercial buildings over 10,000 square feet. That's where their main area of focus is, because single-family homes are not a part of the plan, y'all. And commercial buildings over 10,000 square feet aren't either. Those are going to be turned into mixed-use housing. And they're going to be nice and cheap for the people that are going to suck them up coming real soon. The Urban Core Collective was recommended by a national partner and agreed to serve as the city's equity partner under the Zero Cities Project in early 2019 to address residential homes. The U.S. Green Building Council of West Michigan served as our partner for commercial spaces, engaging the commercial sector through the Grand Rapids 2030 district. So this Michigan Green Communities, established in 2009, the statewide sustainability benchmarking, networking, and technical assistant program. MGC is the product of collaboration and partnership among the MEDC, EAGLE, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Michigan Department of Transportation, of course, MDOT, the Department of Natural Resources, the DNR, the association, all these, they're all doing the sustainable development thing. It's all in every single one of them. And come here, this is Grand Rapids District 2030. Where does that number come from? The Grand Rapids 2030 District is a public-private partnership committed to creating high-performance buildings and smart mobility options. And, you know, all of these different things are heavily involved in creating the master plan. Here, Community Sustainability Partnership, West Michigan, United Nations, RCE, the Community Sustainability Partnership, and the City of Grand Rapids were jointly named a regional center of expertise for education for sustainable development by the United Nations University, which I didn't even know they had their own university. Institute of Advanced Studies in January 2007. Grand Rapids is one of only 4 of the RCEs in the United States. Only 2 remain active. There are over 129 RCEs worldwide and growing. So Grand Rapids has directly been called out by the university, the United Nations University. Something we should know. You come over here. Oh, that's the same one. Uh-oh. That's the first time I've done that. Sorry, guys. There we go. Community Sustainability Partnership and Leadership Team. So you come down here and you see that you have Grand Rapids Community College. Here is Allison Sutter, the Sustainability Manager of the city for the City of Grand Rapids. This is the owner brewery Vivint, Sustainability Director. Calvin College, all the colleges. Western Michigan University was absolutely recognized by the United Nations. I read an article last week. So Western Michigan is regulatory captured. The 3-year plus infrastructure plan, this is community collaboration on climate change. An ongoing work, C4 will influence the Grand Rapids master planning process. Connect individuals and organizations to available trainings, provide professional development for project coordinator, community-based climate action and adaptation plan. So yet another organization that's involved in the planning process that has been trained using sustainability, the SDGs of the United Nations. The C4 has 6 priorities that we are focused on in the near term. As we continue to grow, learn, and evolve, these priorities may change. The first 3 are about infrastructure and planning. The last 3 are subject areas that C4 leadership identifies as priorities. So it's whatever they identify as a priority. But prioritize subject area, energy justice. You know, I'm all for justice, but the justice that these individuals are talking about, it's as they say, you have a smart meter, it's not equitable for me to be able to have the money to turn on my heat and have it at 73. The state of Michigan thinks that 68 is the highest I need to go. So they go beep, boop, beep, and they program my smart meter, which I don't have one, but if I had one, they would program it and would not allow me to go to what I want at 73. I like it warm. I don't like the cold, but it won't be up to me. That's energy justice. Housing, education and awareness on climate change and climate justice. They go hand in hand. All this. So here you can see who's involved. I thought there was a name on here, but yes, okay. There she is. Allison, City of Grand Rapids, 20 years experience in sustainability field, is a licensed attorney. That's wonderful. Responsible for managing the city's sustainability, climate change, and environmental justice programs, as well as the creation and implementation of the citywide strategic plan. Before joining the city, Allison's career included sustainability positions. Okay, she's got a lot going on. 2020 is when she was handpicked by Governor Whitmer. Now, equity. We need to understand what equity is. To understand the full impact of equity will have on our daily lives, let's look at its intended definition as prepared by its promoters. United Way of the National Capital Area, a longtime charity, defines equity as the quality of being fair and impartial. Social equity is impartiality, fairness, and justice for all people in social policy. Social equity takes into account systemic inequalities to ensure everyone in a community has access to the same opportunities and outcomes. Equity of all kinds acknowledges that inequalities exist and works to eliminate them. Social equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Think about how insane that sounds. To allocate exact resources and opportunities to reach an equal outcome for every individual on this plane of existence. How could you do such a thing? It's like myself and my friend runs and I don't. So how are you going to make it equitable outcome that we both go to the finish line at the same time? You have me start halfway done and that way we both end at the same time? Like, how is that fair to my friend? If we are to make sure that everyone has access to the same opportunities and outcomes, the very first thing that must be eliminated is competition. We must face the fact that not everyone has the same abilities or even the same intensity to get ahead. Right, my friend can run better than I can because she cares to run better than I can. I have different priorities, and that's why equal outcomes is a nightmare. That equal outcomes means we're all in a green jumpsuit in a tiny little apartment with no animals. And yeah, it sounds like a nightmare to me. Because I love yeah, obviously I love my dogs, I love animals in general. Anyway, we must face the fact that not everyone has the same abilities or even the same intensity to get ahead. It's just not fair to judge any action on who did it best. Who won? However, as our young people are growing up, they are constantly confronted with some kind of competition. Almost everything in the structure of our society is based on competition. It's all around us. How are they to learn and accept the peaceful and honorable ideas of a world without competition? After all, isn't competition the root of hatred? And doesn't that lead to war? So logically, competition is the root of the main obstacle for imposing equity. Thus, if we are to have peace and harmony, we must deal with it now. Let's take a look at all the sources of competition in our everyday lives that indoctrinate us into rejecting the ideas of equity. The number one source of anti-equity competition is sports. Now, some schools are already involving kids with games in which scores are not kept. That way, they will learn that the true purpose of the game is the fun in playing. The children are taught that the talent and skill have nothing to do with it. Thus, the vicious, cutthroat attitude that comes with competition to win is eliminated. Such an attitude will set us free and bring the new goal of world peace and love to reality. Obviously, the influence is huge. As children reach learning age, influence and pressure to join competitive sports is enormous. He goes into sports quite a bit, but come down here. There are more situations in our society keeping us from reaching the goal of equitable lifestyle. How about politicians who compete for office? Shouldn't government really be run by diverse volunteer committees who are just concerned that good things happen for everyone? Elections are competition. How about the massive amounts of money which politicians are earning as they sell their favor to the highest bidders? It's a competition to see who will get the most, and the wealth they gain is out of the range of income of ordinary people they pretend to represent. Nothing is more non-equitable than politicians. All of these situations feed our society against the ideals of social equity. There is no way this goal can be achieved with so many non-equity practices running our society. All must be eliminated. In kids, that includes video games that are built on the very root of competition. We are surrounded by the ingrained negative competitive influence of the old culture. It has to be eliminated before every citizen understands the new, fair, equitable society and complies. As Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum has said, in a truly equitable world, you will own nothing and be happy. Now you know what he meant and the only way to achieve it. Enough of the globalist doublespeak, let's deal with reality. If you have bought into any of these ideas and want to impose an equitable world, wake up. We are not sheep that just follow the leader, or chickens that just sit on the roost. An equitable world is a controlled, well-ordered society. Anyone thinking differently, bringing new ideas or inventions, would cause a major disruption to the contrived peace. Someone might advance beyond their neighbor. That can't be allowed. We are human beings. We are all different, motivated by different things. Not everyone thinks alike or is motivated by the same things. Those who don't have athletic skills may have other skills that allow them to compete in a different kind of game. Some may like to quietly ponder ideas and solutions. They become inventors. Some may just like to help others. Perhaps they become doctors. Others excel at business and find ways to provide the supplies and services we need. All are motivated for different reasons. Hopes, dreams, goals. Those are things you rarely hear about today. It used to be the driving force for our lives. They were the first things our parents instilled in us. What do you want to be when you grow up? Competition and individual thought are the keys to happiness and freedom. Think of such a society when all competition is eliminated. Every day is exactly the same. There would be no motivation to do anything. Life would be drudgery with every step repeated over and over again. America was born under freedom to compete and to chase your individual dreams. It's the reason why millions flocked here from nations where they were stuck in one place, unable to even think of dreams. Here they prospered because that's what free humans do. Before America, most societies were controlled by an upper class they were born into. The rulers made the rules. Everyone else simply served as a cog in the wheel. Individual thought, action, and ideas were not allowed. People were stuck in one spot without property or the ability to build personal wealth, and society stagnated. They were the peasant class. There were no Edisons, Fords, or Wright brothers to freely act on their own ideas. Why bother? It would just be taken away by the ruling class. But that was a world of equity amongst the non-ruling people, and equity of poverty. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this equity. In free America, which is now being denigrated as a racist, closed society, everyone actually did have the opportunity to throw off the labels they were born with and move forward in a life of their own choosing via striving for better. However, that freedom was slowly destroyed by ever-growing government plantation, full of false promise and hidden controls over free action. Now the rulers of that plantation of deceit, who stole the liberties our founders sought to protect, insist that they have the solution to the problems they created, based on the false premise of equity. In reality, social equity is the recreation of the ruling class over the peasants. If you've bought into any of this, thinking it will bring you hope and happiness, then you are already a sad and pathetic victim of a new monarchy of misery. Existing simply as a cog in a well-controlled wheel is little more than experiencing death during life. You still have time to say no. We do. We still have time to say no. And that really is the only solution. We have to say no. So I want to share this. Comes out of Oxford Traffic. Will the Oxford traffic filters be physical barriers? This joint statement from Oxfordshire County Council and Oxford City Council on Oxford's traffic filters. This came out December of 2022, and this is the Wayback Machine because they've deleted this since then because it's very telling. This is part of the 15-minute city. Oxfordshire County Council, supported by Oxford City Council, is proposing to install traffic filters as a trial on 6 roads in Oxford. The trial is currently planned to begin in 2024. The traffic filters are not physical barriers of any kind and will not be physical road closures. They are simply traffic cameras that can read license plate numbers. If a vehicle passes through the filter at certain times of the day, the camera will read the plate, and if you do not have an exemption or a residence permit, you will receive a fine in the mail. You will receive a fine if you don't have the proper permissions. Buses and taxis will be able to pass through the traffic filters freely at all times. People can walk or cycle through them at all times, and there will be exemptions and permits for blue badge holders. emergency services, health workers, and both professional and non-professional care workers. Government, 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 government. The government will be able to go wherever they want without paying extra. Everybody else, you will have to pay $12.50. I don't know what it's called, pounds. It's $12.50 in pounds. That's how much you're going to be paying a day in order to go to certain areas. People receiving frequent hospital treatments will also be eligible to drive through the filters. Oxford residents and residents of some surrounding villages will be able to apply for a permit to drive through the filters on up to 100 days a year. Only 100 days a year you can drive through. Residents living in the rest of Oxfordshire will be able to apply for a permit to drive through the filter on up to 25 days a year. Doesn't this sound like regulation of movement? It's just logic. And here's the thing. The people didn't want this. Does that sound familiar too, Michiganders? The people didn't ask for this. They didn't want this. Actually, they went to their township meetings, their county meetings, and said, no, we don't want it. And guess what? They still put them up anyway. They still put the cameras up. They're still putting up the barriers, and people are fighting it. It's ridiculous. The traffic filters work in exactly the same way as the existing traffic cameras in High Street and are widely used in cities across the UK to manage congestion and support public transport. Residents will still be able to drive to every part of the city at any time, but in the future, during certain times of the day, you may need to take a different route if you want to travel by car. The reason we have proposed these changes is because, as everyone who lives and visits Oxford knows, the city has awful congestion, has had it for decades. This is damaging both our economy and our environment, is making the bus network unviable. Notice how they talk about the bus here. Our aim is to reduce traffic levels and congestion, make the buses faster and more reliable, and make cycling and walking safer and more pleasant. Oxford needs more sustainable, reliable, inclusive transport system for everyone, particularly for the 30% of our households who do not own a car. Equity. That's equity. And yeah, it goes on, but if you come here really quick, where is it? Companies have alleged that Oxfordshire County Council has broken its promise over the East Oxford low-traffic neighborhoods and claim that journeys were now slower and less reliable. This just came out this year, 12th of October. And it says, Oxford Bus Company is disappointed over LTN recommendations. The Oxford Bus Company and Thelms Travel both claimed that the controversial traffic calming measures have been detrimental to passengers, drivers, and the communities that they serve. They were disappointed that councillors had been recommended to make LTNs permanent at Cabinet meeting on October 17th. The authority maintained that bus journey times would improve when its traffic filter schemes rolled out next year. But guess what? They didn't. They got much worse. And the bus lobbies are saying, hey, we want you to stop. Now, London Uprising, Blade Runners on the hunt for ULEZ cameras. So if you don't know, really quick, Blade Runner is a movie that came out of this book right here. Let's see. It's called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And you can't really see it, unfortunately. There we go. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. And the Blade Runner movies, there's one with Harrison Ford, earlier 80s, maybe 90s, I don't know when. And then one just came out a couple years ago. And basically, these Blade Runners in real life name themselves after this book because this is the first cyberpunk dystopian novel that really talks about androids, which is AI in a human-looking robot. But I highly recommend you check that out because it's an excellent classic sci-fi, and it really questions AI, although he doesn't call it AI, he calls it an android, and crime. So, London Uprising Blade Runners on the hunt for ULEZ cameras. Fed up Londoners appear to be taking the law into their own hands as the London Metropolitan Police has reported 510 crimes against so-called ULEZ, ultra-low emission zone cameras in the period of April 1st to August 31st. So they've set up these zones where you can't drive your car, or if you do, these cameras will fine you. Equipped with license plate recognition software, such cameras are meant to pick out vehicles which do not meet required minimum emission standards. Most petrol cars made before January 2006 and diesel cars made before September 2015 do not meet these standards. Under the ULEZ initiative, drivers are liable for $12.50 pounds. 12 pounds, sorry. And I don't know if pounds are more or less. They're close. It's very close to the same. Daily charge if they drive non-compliant vehicles anywhere in London. And those who do not pay fines face fines of $180. So again, if you're rich, what do you care if you pay? But if you're poor, 180 pounds is freaking a lot of money. The last 2 weeks, however, saw a significant uptick of citizenry open hostility towards Khan's invasive measures, with the cameras being the obvious targets. Between April and mid-August, 339 of such cameras had either been damaged, stolen, or their vision obscured. When taking the past month in isolation, one even sees a doubling of the number of crimes since August 1st in the Met. So people are sick and tired of it. Look at that. 1,900 cameras in outer London, and now 3,400 cameras across the whole ULEZ. 3,400 cameras. We are paying for a police state. Again, they didn't vote for this. And now these Blade Runners are taking these cameras down. And I want your ideas on this. I want your input. Do you think that them going and taking those cameras down is civil disobedience? Or, which, I mean, I guess it is civil disobedience, but is it violence? Is it nonviolent resistance? Because if you look up the word violence, it does say that, you attack the camera, you are using violence. Is it justified to go after the cameras? That's my question. Do you think that these people are wrong? Some people say they should just put a bag over the camera. But it's like, what the hell is that going to do? These people don't want the cameras there. They never voted for them. They didn't want to pay for them with their own tax dollars, and yet they're being forced on them. So what do you do? I'll get into more of that, but first, we're going to go into some Grand Rapids stuff. Oh, no, not this one. So this shows Mobile GR. Mobile GR is a Grand Rapids department that works to provide safe, reliable, affordable, and diverse transportation options to the city's economic and quality of life goals. Mobile GR operates city-owned parking systems and maintains many aspects of transportation and safety infrastructure. You come down here and you see Vision Zero. You go here. This is the 15-minute city concept. And Vision Zero, the keystone habitat for reimagining our transportation system. In 1995, 8 years after Paul O'Neill arrived at Alcola, the Vision Zero concept was born in Sweden. Vision Zero, which has since been adapted by hundreds of cities around the world, is a commitment and an approach to eliminating traffic deaths and severe injuries. Again, that sounds like Maui to me, because if you looked in the Maui plans, the transportation plans, master plan, they talk quite often about trying to eliminate traffic deaths and severe injuries. That's the only way they could spin it, to make it's about safety. It's not about manipulating the way you move and controlling our movements and therefore not having a free society. No, it's about helping with traffic deaths. It distills the complex challenges of improving how we move around in our cities into a simple, unambiguous goal of zero. The goal is so simple that it's right in the name, not Vision 5. Oh my God, Vision Zero. Vision Zero can be to our transportation system what O'Neill's single-minded focus on worker safety was to Alcola, the keystone habit that triggers the comprehensive change. If we keep people safe on and around our city and highways, many other good things come along for the ride, pun intended. Vision Zero Cities slow vehicle traffic. So Vision Zero Cities slow vehicle traffic. That is part of the ULEZ and the LTNs, low traffic networks that are happening. It's about, they're bringing the speed limit down from 30 to 20 right now over in London. So Vision Zero is being implemented over there. And it's being implemented in Grand Rapids. So again, if you want to know what your city is going to look like, Grand Rapids, look at Oxford. Do a lot of research, because what's going on there is very telling. Zero Cities slow vehicle traffic, which brings more cyclists and pedestrians onto the street network. making our transportation system more equitable and affordable while reducing noise and air pollution. Complete streets. Complete streets, yes. Come down here. Unfortunately, too many Vision Zero cities have actually seen an increase in traffic deaths, including my own San Francisco. Walkable cities expert Jeff Speck has remarked that here in the U.S., Vision Zero can't help but feel like a sick joke. Sweden and Crafton themselves have observed that weak and watered down versions of Vision Zero could threaten the concept. Okay, so they're saying that there's been an increase because we're not implementing it fully. And again, if you read The Vision of the Anointed, it's the same thing over and over. You know what? I can't help it. I got to do it real quick. You come to here, it says there are 3 stages. This is Thomas Sowell, another genius. The 3 stages, the crisis, and this gives an example. Given that the purpose of the war on poverty was to reduce dependency, the question is how much dependency was there at the time, and was it increasing or decreasing before the new policies were instituted? In short, what was the crisis for which the Anointed were proposing a solution? As of the time the War on Poverty programs began, the number of people who lived below the poverty line had been declining. So he goes into that, like, it all depends. It was declining since 1960 and was only about half of what it had been in 1950. So it was already declining before they implemented their solution. So the solution was the Economic Opportunity Act, which was passed in 1964, creating the Office of Economic Opportunity, the War on Poverty Agency. As an historian of poverty programs put it, Congress was quick to buy a program that might help welfare wither away. The Council of Economic Advisors declared conquest of poverty is well within our power. The results, the percentage of people dependent upon the federal government to keep above the poverty line increased. Although the number of such dependent people had been declining for more than a decade before the War on Poverty programs actually began. This downward trend now reversed itself and began rising within a few years that program went underway. And instead of saying that it was because their plans weren't working, they gaslight and say you're just not implementing the plans correctly. Or, you're just not looking at the data that we want you to look at. Like, they will basically mold and manipulate to complete their narrative for their vision of the Anointed. You're just not implementing it. That's why they actually increased in deaths. No, they increased in deaths because your plans suck. Olsa and Helinsky have taken top to bottom approaches to making streets safe, including slow speed limit street designs that prioritize safety over moving traffic, significant car-free spaces, comprehensive bike networks, and robust public transportation. So again, this is what Vision Zero is, and the city of Grand Rapids has promised to implement this. So it can be done, but we in the U.S. need to take Vision Zero much more seriously, with strong commitment from mayors and city councils paired with relentless follow-through. Relentless. This will not just save lives, although that is critical by itself. More broadly, a vigorous focus on road safety can be the keystone habit that triggers other positive changes as well. Vision Zero, when effectively implemented, can do so much more than eliminate traffic violence. It can transform our cities for the better. So they say it. They are trying to transform our cities. Now, we go to the strategic plan. And my fellow Grand Rapidians, we have accomplished a lot in our future. Our future is bright, but we have challenges. This updated strategic plan is a refinement of the first version of the plan, which is one of my key initiatives as city manager. Upon arriving in Grand Rapids in 2018, it became clear to me that the strategic plan was needed to organize and focus the work of the city, right? He probably was put in place for that specific reason. The city's core values of accountability, collaboration, customer service, equity, innovation, and sustainability remain the foundation for the plan and are unchanged. However, we have enhanced our sustainability focus by adding more emphasis on climate resiliency. We will continue to accomplish this through implementation of this plan. which is our community playbook for aligning initiatives, resources, goals, departments, operations, projects, and investments with a transparent and trackable timeline. With your help, we can achieve the outcomes of this plan. They need your help, for sure. They need you to comply. So, what do we have to do? Not comply. This is particularly important as we continue to embrace equity in every aspect of this plan, which is why I had to go over the equity thing with you guys, because we are embracing equity in every aspect of this plan. Finally, I am extremely grateful for the tremendous support provided by the City Commissioners, Sustainability and Performance Manager, Officer Allison Sutter, and the many staff who were instrumental in the creation of the first version and this updated version. This is a very long document, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but you could see accountability, collaboration, customer service, equity, innovation, and sustainability. 6 goals. 6 goals is what we have here. We knew from the beginning that the plan would be a living, breathing document that would require adjustment and revision over time. Living document. They say something about a living building too. No, documents aren't living and they're not breathing, okay? Human beings are. Connie says, all in the name of safety and for the greater good. I'm so sick of it, especially now that I understand what that means. Yes, I know, Connie. Me too. And I know that I talk about it all the time. I want people to be aware of it, because in order to say no, you have to be aware of what you're saying no to and why. And so I appreciate you hanging out. And again, I'm tired of hearing about equity. I'm tired of hearing about all these sustainability even. But this is the plan, and it's right here. This is the strategic plan, and I have others too to share. So there is no change in our vision, mission 5 and 6. So 5 of our 6 values or our 6 priorities. The definition of our sustainability value has a slight revision to incorporate climate resiliency specifically. 29 objectives. And while so 6 priorities and 6 values. Equity statement. The City of Grand Rapids is dedicated to advancing equitable outcomes and opportunities by leading with racial equity to address root causes of disparities. The city defines equity as the condition achieved when people have the tools, resources, and connections necessary to be fully engaged and prepared to benefit from the opportunities they seek. Racial equity is achieved when one's race or ethnicity does not determine, in a statistical sense, how one experiences opportunity, power, and life outcomes. You know, I even have a hard time. What is that gobbledygook? Racial equity is achieved when one's race or ethnicity does not determine, in a statistical sense, how one experiences opportunity, power, and life outcomes. The targeted approach of our racial equity will advance our universal goal of elevating quality of life in Grand Rapids. Equity is one of the city's 6 values and must be embedded into all of our decisions, policies, and practices. In an effort to dismantle the systemic and institutional injustice that has been prevalent throughout our history, the city has made the conscious choice to highlight equity in each priority area of our strategic plan. So, embed equity throughout government operations. Again, equity, keyword we need to understand. That means equal outcomes, and equal outcomes are terrible. It's like The Giver. If you want to read, it's a middle grade fiction. It was one of the first dystopian novels I've ever read, and I will never forget it. It was a very good dystopian novel, and I didn't really understand what it was trying to say. I just knew that it was trying to say something really important. And yeah, I highly recommend you read The Giver. It'll take you a day. I think it's like 150 pages. It's middle grade, very easy. Evaluate the budget proposals, policies, programs, services, and initiatives for racial equity and social justice impact, and report out on all those incomes. Percentage of elected officials, city employees, and people serving on a city board of commission trained in equity. So people are going to be trained. Behavior modification. Create equity and environmental sustainability scorecards. And so these are all the keywords. I have a list I'm going to share. Yeah, walkability, sustainable, smart, equity, multimodal, and mixed use. All of those are keywords that you can look at whatever plan, like one of these documents. This one specifically is the strategic plan for Grand Rapids. But no matter where you are, what plan, government plan, you can look at these keywords for yourself. Come down here, the metrics, number and percentage of new hires that are persons of color. So attract, hire, develop, and retain high-performing employees. It should be about merit. It shouldn't be about your color of your skin or your genitals, okay? Your gender. Neither one should be why you're hired. If you are right for the position, then you should be hired. If you are qualified for the job and will do the best out of everybody else, then you should be hired. Because you can't change if you're born male or female, but you can't change your color, but you can change how you work, how you can change how you show up on time or whatever. You can change your behaviors to be a high valued employee, or you can learn how to do certain things and be perfect for that position because of those things that you learned. These are all choices that you actually can make in your life, and that's what you should be judged upon, your choices, not things you can't change, but things you can. Optimize facilities, workspaces, and technology systems to meet the demands of government operations, the community, and our growing, changing population. Make all facilities welcoming and accessible for all customers, with an emphasis on people with differing abilities, people that speak a language other than English, and people that are transgender and or non-binary. Why are we going to make all facilities welcoming and accessible for all customers, but why are we emphasizing these people? That's not equity. And now, again, I'm not for equity, but it doesn't make any sense. You're saying you want things to be equitable. Oh, wait a minute. I see. You're right. Equitable. So these individuals need extra assistance. Okay, so I guess it would be, it's not equality, it's equity. That's what this is. Connie says, absolutely, sustainability and equitability bring the same feeling of nausea. It makes me sick if they used a slow incrementation, of these goals. The frog in the water, yes. The boiling water, yes. And then the other thing that they use on us too is crabs in a bucket, right? Instead of the crabs helping each other escape the bucket, we constantly are pulling each other down. We need to not do that. All the crabs in the bucket need to help each other get out of the bucket and figure out maybe who put us in the bucket and pinch them. Percent of staff requiring remedial cybersecurity training. I just highlighted that because cybersecurity is going to be a big deal because of the data-driven strategic plan. Develop and implement a data-driven strategic plan and performance management that supports the city in achieving our vision, the vision of the anointed. Ensure organization-wide accountability, collaboration, and innovation by tracking, analyzing, and reporting on performance. Big data, baby. Again, all these cameras, 3,600 cameras in London, in the ULEZ zones, ultra low emission zones. Can you imagine? Just that, to me, it sounds like China. Every action, and that's another reason maybe they want you out of the car, because it's harder to identify your face. If you're walking or riding a bike, boom, your face is out. I don't know. I don't like the Big Brother surveillance society, and I don't like that we're paying for it and we're not voting for it, and that it's all happening anyway. So again, I wonder, do the Blade Runners have the right idea? They're not harming people. They are taking out Big Brother's spy machines. But it is a form of violence, and I do nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. Although I don't know. I don't know if nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience, usually they coincide, but could you smash a camera and it be considered civil disobedience? Let me know in the comments, because it is something that I struggle with. Support City Commission's legislative priority agenda, which is in all caps. Thought that was something that maybe I should look into. Come down here. All of this is important to read, but okay. That's all I have highlighted. I highly suggest, I have another document, but this is the strategic plan. It was updated October of 2022. So look into it. You'll see over and over. Right here, Equitable Economic Development Mobility Strategic Plan. And so you can read that right here. So there's so many different plans that you need to look at in order to understand how they're transforming. Transformative Plan Phase 4. You can download the plan. We're continually transforming city operations. The transformation plan Phase 4 includes departmental value streams as they align to the city's quadruple bottom line. Office of the City Manager. And then you come here, bicycle action plan. So as I read from Behind the Green Mask, the bicycle lobby, because that's what it is, they're very powerful and they are help pushing the UN Agenda 21. Again, whether they know it or not, that's what they're doing. And you come here, climate change. While the city of Grand Rapids has been a leader of environmental sustainability and diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are and have been feeling the impacts of climate change in Grand Rapids. To avoid the worst impacts, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions and plan for known changes in increased extreme weather. The climate change crisis is one of the city's top priorities. Check out the strategic plan and the city's commission resolution declaring climate change a crisis, which I do have to go over that. Creating a zero carbon climate resilient city requires hard work, collaboration, and commitment from local government, as well as individuals, businesses, and institutions here in our community, as well as across the globe. Learn about climate change in the Office of Sustainability's monthly newsletter. What is climate justice? Climate justice movement addresses the ethical dimensions of climate change, shifting from talk about greenhouse gases, melting ice caps, and polar bears into a civil rights movement with the people and communities most vulnerable to climate impacts at its heart. Climate justice seeks to integrate justice into climate solutions. Some of these solutions include just transition, energy democracy, transportation equity, food sovereignty, and efficient, affordable housing. A bunch of jargon that we really don't know what it means. But I can tell you that it's not going to be good for us. It's a bunch of government initiatives. What is a just transition? Who is to decide what a just transition is? Is it someone that was trained in equity, trained in all of these different things? Like, these are questions we have to ask ourselves. Who decides? Who defines these things? And that will, who benefits from those, definitions that they end up deciding? These are questions we need to ask, because just transition, it could be that the dams going to the Native American tribes, again, I'll talk about it more on Monday, but that could be a just transition to give the dams the power of the property around the water sources to indigenous populations. I mean, what is it? Transportation equity. What the hell is that? Does that mean that everybody's riding bikes because only 30% of people have cars? So that's not equitable? Like, who decides this crap? Transportation equity focuses on solutions that include both equitable access to new technologies for low-income and communities of color, while moving away from reliance on automotive vehicles and encouraging public transportation and forms of active mobility, such as walking or biking. So they do say, they're not saying we're going to ban cars. And so that's why these people say, well, it's just a conspiracy theory. They're not saying they're going to ban cars. But if you look into what they're doing and how they're implementing these plans, the end result is that cars are banned. So it doesn't matter that they're not saying it. It matters what is in reality. And the reality is, when you have these ultra low emission zones, if you have low traffic neighborhoods, then what you have is fines on real people, and you have cameras at every corner in order to control the movement of people. That's real world how it has to happen. So them not saying it doesn't mean anything. And what matters is what the hell is actually going on in the real world. Our citywide strategic plan commits the city to create and support programs and policies to reduce carbon emissions from the buildings and transportation sectors throughout the community. Building codes I could do a whole video on building codes. You won't be able to have a gas stove. You won't be able to have a gas heater. You won't be able to have natural gas. They're phasing it out. That's how they're doing it. That's how they're controlling us. Economic development. The city is also in the process of completing a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory in partnership with ICLEI. You know what's happening in January of 2024? Amazon is requiring every seller on Amazon, all of those small businesses, to monitor their carbon footprint. Do you know how expensive that shit is? It's unbelievably expensive to have everything to monitor your carbon footprint and to have a little score, like a QR code score. Amazon is pushing that. You know why? Because it decimates small business. Amazon can handle it. Again, the haves can pay for all of these policies and go around them. But the have-nots get screwed. The small business will just go out of business because they can't produce their carbon footprint score. And all of this is garbage in, garbage out. It's based on bunk science. It's based on that carbon is pollution, and you can't prove that. And so every policy that comes out of the idea that carbon is pollution and that resources are finite and that we are overpopulated, every idea that comes out of those is poison. It's poison in the veins of our cities, of our nation. It's poison. The greenhouse gas emissions inventory will identify our current impact on the climate, what sectors in our community are emitting greenhouse gas emissions, and will help us set a science-based target for reducing our emissions and track our progress. So imagine doing that to every small business in reality that doesn't even use Amazon. Our city is going to push this. Every regulation equals more money. That's basically what it is. The plan's mobility section also includes strategies to decrease the number of people who drive alone in their vehicle by increasing bus ridership, biking, walking, and car sharing, which all decrease fuel consumption and the resulting carbon emissions. So they are telling you, that they want to reduce, but they're not telling you that the ultimate goal is that you will not own a car. You own nothing to be happy. How do you think that happens? They price you out of it. The only people that will have anything are, again, the people that go to Davos. They're very wealthy, and not even all of them. Little do they know that if you read The Great Taking, which I don't even have in front of me, if you read The Great Taking, that the rich people are going to have their stuff taken too. It's only the people that are in the club. You have to be in the club. And not all of the wealthy that go to Davos are actually in the club. They just think, or they want to be. They want to be. In early 2023, the city will begin the process of completing a community-wide climate vulnerability assessment in partnership with ICLEI. I've been looking out for this. It should be coming out next year, even though it says it'll be available in the fall. There's something else somewhere else that said it will come out in 2024. I will continue to look out for it because we need to look at it. The climate vulnerability assessment will help determine how and to what degree our community is vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. It will include baseline and projected climate conditions, identification of vulnerable populations, identification of critical systems and assets, and including transportation, utilities, water, buildings, environmental resources, natural habitat, recreational spaces, public health, economy, cultural resources, social human services. Again, UN Agenda 21, identify and track everything in the world. They're setting up the system. The climate vulnerability assessment will inform the city's climate action and adaptation plan and will be available in the fall of 2023. Green infrastructure, that's going to talk about, there's just so many. Look at Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. There's so many different plans. I couldn't obviously put them all in a 2-hour time frame, but I have looked at all of them. And again, you can see all the same keywords, and you can see what these policies are going to do. The city's Office of Emergency Management works on planning for and coordinating disaster preparedness, response, and recovery efforts to strengthen the resilience of Grand Rapids community. The Office of Sustainability works with the Office of Emergency Management to provide input. Climate action and adaptation preparations for the CAAP began in early 2022 for a formal launch in March of 2023. A final plan is expected to be complete by summer of 2024, with an implementation appendix to be finalized December of 2024. So there's where I got that. And then history of investment, $600 million over the years in climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. That's how much they've invested. 2005 is when it started. Climate change journey more formally launched in 2013 with 2 key actions. First, we invested nearly $15 million to improve flood walls located throughout downtown in response to the 2013 flood that caused $1.4 million in damage. It breached the water resource recovery facilities' wastewater treatment processes. Second, in partnership with the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, we published the West Michigan Climate Resiliency Report. So we're going to get into that. I know I'm running out of time. I got so much to share always. Resolution declaring climate change a crisis. The amount of speed and greenhouse gas emissions being released is driving what some experts, well, I highlighted some experts because it's the experts that were bought and paid for, or, they want power. They're power addicts. Believe will result in significant and irreversible changes that could have catastrophic effects for humans, particularly for communities of color and low-income communities who are impacted first and worst by climate change. So some experts believe that there are irreversible and significant changes. And so we're going to base our entire plan on what some experts theorize, what they've predicted, what they've dreamt up, that they've envisioned. Because humans have too easily ignored climate change for decades, we are now experiencing and will continue to experience a climate crisis until we collectively take bold action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, prioritize climate adaptation, and focus on climate resiliency. The City of Grand Rapids has been a leader of sustainability, environmental justice, and climate change, and has committed via our strategic plan to continue emphasizing and prioritizing climate change and climate justice work. The City Commission can also take bold action by passing a resolution declaring a climate crisis. NASA indicates that the current level of atmospheric carbon dioxide has increased by 47% since the beginning of the industrial age. So what? In short, the amount of GHGs in our atmosphere is increasing at an alarming rate and significant rate, which is causing our Earth's temperature to increase, which in turn is driving climate change. While many people will point to the very cold and snowy winter we had recently as a counter-argument to global warming and climate change, it's important to remember that climate change is a measure of long-term averages and trends. You get garbage in, garbage out. You can, a book I recommend. You want to know the real science? The real science, you have to look at Green Tyranny, Exposing the Totalitarian Roots of the Climate Industrial Complex. The last 50 pages are just tons of different scientific studies that have been done by real climate scientists that say that everything that they're talking about is bunk. Again, the root of the root is that carbon is a pollution. It's not. And so that being junk science, everything that comes out of it is junk. Why is climate change a crisis? Climate change has been and will continue to significantly impact human health, physical and mental, essential services, and critical infrastructure, economic prosperity for businesses. No, climate change policies will do all this. Economic prosperity for business, organizations, and individuals, social networks, cultural identity, safety, environmental systems. In one of President Biden's first executive orders, he stated the United States and the world face a profound climate crisis. We have at a narrow moment to pursue action at home and abroad. They have a narrow moment. 2020, 21, and 22, the world changed. That was their narrow freaking moment. We have a narrow moment to pursue action at home and abroad in order to avoid the most catastrophic impacts of that crisis and to seize the opportunity that tackling climate change presents. Furthermore, President Biden's executive order states that the scientific community has made clear that the scale and speed of necessary action is greater than previously believed. There is little time left to avoid setting the world on a dangerous, potentially catastrophic climate trajectory. Again, it fits your narrative to say all that. You can't prove it. You're trying to predict the future. In addition, the International Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change, recently published its 6th assessment report, Climate Change 2021, the Physical Science Basis. stating human-induced climate change is already affecting many weather and climate extremes in every region across the globe. Global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius will be exceeded during the 21st century unless deep reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming decades. Now, again, I'm on my page 14. This is all the City of Grand Rapids Committee. This is official Grand Rapids agenda action. And this was in 2021. Many changes due to the past and future greenhouse gas emissions are irreversible for centuries to millennia. How can you know that? How can you prove that? What the hell are you talking about? It drives me nuts. It's like assumption. I'll just believe you. I'll just believe everything that you say. No, prove it. From a physical science perspective, limiting human-induced global warming to a specific level requires limiting cumulative CO2 emissions, reaching at least net zero CO2 emissions, along with strong reductions in other greenhouse gas emissions. Physical and mental health. That's what they say, that climate change will affect your physical and mental health. Not the climate change policies, not the lockdowns of the last few years. No, climate change itself. What has and will the City of Grand Rapids do to address the climate change crisis? In 2005, the City of Grand Rapids was one of the first cities in the country to adapt sustainability as a priority. A few early actions taken by the city included hiring a sustainability consultant, launching the Community Sustainability Partnership, and creating a 20% renewable energy goal. This commitment and these early successes led to the city being the second city in North America to be designated by the United Nations University as a regional center for expertise and sustainability in 2006, and honored by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as the most sustainable mid-sized city in 2010. So there's no doubt, the United Nations is directly involved with Grand Rapids, Michigan. They've given awards. In 2019, the city published our strategic plan, which includes sustainability as one of the 6 core values. The city defines sustainability as the ability to be making decisions with an understanding of how those decisions will impact the environment, people, and communities, and finances both today and in the future. We also created our city's vision. Grand Rapids will be nationally recognized as an equitable, welcoming, innovative, and collaborative city with a robust economy, safe and healthy community, and the opportunity for a high quality of life for all. Some of our most recent notable sustainability and climate accomplishments include, I'm not going to go over all of them, but intervening in the Michigan Public Service Commission cases regarding distributed generation and voluntary green pricing programs. Intervening. That is the most notable sustainability and climate change accomplishments. So they have intervened in the Michigan Public Service Commission, and right now, the Michigan government is trying to give this entity more power over rezoning in local townships. Participating in Zero Cities Project and launching Grand Rapids policies and programs for equitable, healthy, and zero carbon buildings. In partnership with the Urban Core Collective. Remember when I read in the United Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21? Urban Collective. That was 2011 that she called this stuff. U.S. Green Building Council of West Michigan. I did highlight several more things, but of course I'm running out of time. I want to share. Sorry, I have a very important article. Okay. So I need to share this because this is directly, this is what's going to happen if you go to these visioning workshops, okay? And maybe I should have put this at the beginning. I only have 2 people that stayed with me. I appreciate you 2. I hope people will watch all the way to here because this part is very important. So the Delphi technique. Developed by the RAND Corporation as a Cold War mind control technique, Delphi is used to channel a group of people to accept a point of view that is imposed on them while convincing them that it was their idea. In the 1970s and 80s, it was used to convince landowners of the merit of accepting general plan maps. Delphi can be used on any group, from just one person to the entire world. Trained facilitators present a range of choices to a group, but have tailored them to direct the outcome. This is the most often done in public meetings called visioning meetings, put on by your city or county to get your opinion on your town 2020 or 2035, 2040, 2050, all those. Money for these programs often comes from federal agencies, members of the President's Council on Sustainable Development, which was created again by President Clinton right after UN Agenda 21 in 1993. In the form of grants from your local government. So the meetings are advertised as an opportunity for you to give your input to an exciting new plan for the redesign of your city center for the future. Does that not sound exactly like what this is? You'll usually see it as a specific plan for a redevelopment project or a regional transportation plan that involves housing and land use restrictions. Delphi is used in school board meetings, in trainings, at neighborhood association meetings, and other places where the organizers want to give the appearance that they have listened to community opinion and incorporated it into their plan. By the way, you'll never hear the word Delphi. They will never acknowledge that they're doing it. When I went to the Consumers Energy hydro facility meetings to talk about the dams, they had a third-party trained facilitators there, and it was an all-female cast. The company is all-female that they used, but they were trained in this technique to guide those meetings. That's why Consumers Energy isn't running it. They're there, they answer some questions, but they're not running the show. The key thing to know about this is that, of course, you have no input. Only comments and observations that support the pre-approved plan will be supported. All others will be written on a big pad of paper and discarded later. The illusion of public buy-in is all that is needed. The organizers can later point to the fact that they held a public meeting. A certain number of residents attended, public comment was taken, and the community approved the plan. It's exactly what they're doing with the dams. And that's exactly what they're going to do at this visioning meeting, and that's what they did at the one that happened earlier this year. It was all an illusion of a public buy-in. That's what they do. The facilitator is often a private consultant who has been professionally trained in running and managing a meeting. This consultant has been hired by your city or Consumers Energy to fulfill the requirement that the project has been seen and supported by its citizens. It's your plan. If the project is controversial, this is a controversial one, the city may have put out the call for nonprofit groups, neighborhood associations, city boards and commissions, and city employees to send members to seed the audience and outnumber potential opponents. That kind of reminds me of something that happened in the beginning of the Goshen thing. If the project is controversial, the city may have to put out a call for nonprofit groups, neighborhood associations, city boards, and commissions. At the beginning, when the Renaissance Zone meeting was taking place with Green Charter Township and Big Rapids Township, they had Dr. Bill Pink there, who is from the MEDC and the Right Place and Ferris State University. So that's three huge, community member type influence that could be, helpful to get in place the Renaissance Zone. So they did that. City employees, there were people in the economic development corporations, Mecosta County, all kinds of different individuals went. So they sent members to seed that. I mean, that's how I see it. That I could see that. So this is war. Okay? This is war. On those few occasions when the majority of the attendees object to the planned outcome, the facilitator will close the meeting and reschedule it for another time and place. You are experiencing the new consensus. So important. I probably should have done this earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't. Hopefully people see this. If you go to the meeting, you need to know this. So this is what it's going to look like. So let's see what goes on in a Delphi meeting. As you come in the door, you'll be asked to sign in. If you go to a meeting wherever you are, think about this. Is this what happens? You don't have to just believe me or this person. Go for yourself, see how this takes place, but know that these people are explaining what you'll see. You'll be given a name tag, and depending on the meeting type, you'll either sit at tables or you'll be in an auditorium. A brief overview of the project will be given, and no questions will be allowed. The facilitator may try to establish the demographics of the attendees by asking you to raise your hand if you're between 1825, 2635, etc., your race, and your gender. Now the meeting begins in earnest. Speakers will include government officials, sometimes your mayor or council people, representatives from nonprofit organizations, and local business persons with an interest in the outcome, such as engineers, architects, and planners. The meeting is on a tight time schedule, and there are few opportunities for questions. What questions are permitted are usually answered briefly or deflected to later. The facilitator has produced attractive PowerPoint slides and colored handouts with lots of photos of middle-class people recreating among sunlit, multi-story buildings with wide sidewalks lined with bistro tables. You notice that there is no manufacturing. In this pleasant utopia, there are few cars, lots of high-speed trains, blue skies, and bikes. Lots of bikes. Open space parks, no private yards. Shallow porches that face the street. Buildings constructed right behind the sidewalk and touching their neighbors. You may be shown a set of maps of your town and told to color in areas where you'd like to see the pastel utopia instead of what's there now. By the way, often the property owners in the specific project area have deliberately not been notified about this meeting, and they absolutely will not have been sought out to attend. Again, this reminds me of the Renaissance Zone Board meeting. Nobody that was living in the area was sought out to attend. This meeting is for the public, meaning anyone can attend from anywhere and give their opinion about the vision. As people are happily scribbling away with their crayons and gold stars like kindergartners, they are unaware that a large percentage of the group has already been briefed on the project and instructed to manage their table. Yes, there are shills at every table. In the larger meetings, they may identify themselves as being part of the organizing team, and they will run the table openly. While the unsuspecting real people are chatting, the table monitors are observing their behavior. Who is argumentative? Who is docile? Who can be triggered to cause a scene? Who can be counted on to support the project? Neighborhood leaders who cooperate are identified for cultivation later. They will be used to start neighborhood associations or encouraged to dominate existing ones. I keep going back to that dam meeting because that's the most recent form of Delphi technique I've seen, and they are going to start a neighborhood association for each dam, so that way they can get local leaders to run these meetings at each dam. It's when the meeting is going smoothly, you'll never notice the obvious, that you haven't been giving any real choices, and that all of the printed materials show the project just as it will be when finalized, regardless of anything you might say. At your table, you might say something like, "Hey, I don't like the idea of narrowing Main Street to 2 lanes." But you'll either be ignored, or several of the people at the table will team up to show you that it's best for the community and that you don't want your town to be friendly, and don't you want your town to be friendly for bikes and pedestrians? You might say, "How can the fire department get through there if you put a median down Center Street?" You'll be told that it has already been approved by the fire department, and your comment will be written down to be thrown out later. What happens if you dare to speak out? Communitarianism is at the start of the consensus meetings. A vital element of communitarianism is the use of social pressure to make you conform. Shame, shame, shame. The point is to create a climate of isolation in the meeting for those who do not agree. The idea of dissent is too scary, too exposed, and too antisocial for you to brave ridicule and the disapproval of your peers. So if you dare to speak out, you will be ignored, laughed at, maligned, shamed, booed, or shouted down. Individual table monitors may goad a person they've identified as liable to make a scene to loudly agree with you in order to make you appear to have a fringe point of view. The facilitator may allow this bit of chaos to continue for a minute so that the tension can be relieved and your question forgotten. When the meeting is over, you'll be thanked for your input and leave feeling that maybe you're the only one who doesn't like the plan or who felt manipulated. You might even decide that you're not going back to one of those meetings since you didn't really feel heard, and besides, it took hours of your evening. Maybe you have a nagging bit of shame that you were visioning on someone else's property, someone who wasn't there and couldn't protest that they like their property just the way it is. Maybe you don't want to think about it, what it would take to make that vision real. But you shrug your shoulders, you walk to your car feeling that you've been a good citizen and participated in a community event. You have been Delphied. And this was from Behind the Green Mask as well. This is what happens. I have a video for you guys. I can't put it up here. I wanted to show you this really quick. But as I said, there will be several videos down below you need to watch. I wanted to show you this because I thought it was funny. Senator Mary Kavanaugh and I present a $1.75 million appropriation to the city of Farmington. $1 million is designated for the sustainability of Governor Warner Mansion, and $750,000 for a new fire truck. It's like, yeah, $1 million for the Governor Mansion. That's the world we live in. You know what? I don't care. I'm going a little long today. I want to watch this with you. Check this video out. This is a Delphi meeting, okay? This is a meeting that Rosa Koire went to back in 2011.
This is the flyer for One Bay Area. They're also calling it Plan Bay Area. This is the Agenda 21 plan for the San Francisco Bay Area, the 9-county Bay Area, to regionalize the entire area and take transportation tax dollars and use them to develop smart growth, sprawl. So you'll notice they call this, they call these plenary sessions. They must think they're at the UN already. And you'll also notice on the agenda, this is the Plan Bay Area agenda that was handed out. There's nothing on there that says that there's going to be a Pledge of Allegiance, but we made them say the pledge, and they were none too happy about it, I guarantee you. So things did not go the way that ABAG, which is Association of Bay Area Governments, and MTC, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, didn't go the way that they expected them to go at this meeting. And I'll show you one of the reasons why. We had made a flyer, and here's the flyer. It says, "Notice you are being Delphied. This meeting is designed to manipulate and direct public opinion to approve the One Bay Area plan." And then it goes on to tell you about the Delphi method, which was being used at this meeting, used to direct public opinion to a particular outcome that was pre-designed. And there's an illusion there that it's your plan. That's what they're calling it, your plan. But in fact, it's not your plan at all. It is UN Agenda 21. And on the bottom of the flyer, we have, we let people know that this is produced by the Santa Rosa Neighborhood Coalition, and we have our website addresses there. And here's what's on the back of the flyer. Because they had designed these meetings. There are 7 million people in the San Francisco Bay Area, but they've designed these meetings so that only 100 people can be accommodated. And so basically there are 9 counties, so they're saying that 900 people will then have the so-called decision-making power for 7 million people in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we wanted to let people know that you cannot be denied access to the meeting. There are open meeting laws in California. The Brown Act tells you that you should and will be allowed to enter any public meeting and cannot be denied access. So they also can't make you register. They can't make you sign in, okay? And they can't tell you that you can't record the meeting, and they have to allow the public to address the meeting. So we wanted people to know this, and we handed this flyer out. This is a 2-sided flyer. We handed the flyer out at the meeting, and the people who were the shills, some of them refused to take it. They acted like their hand was burnt when they when we handed it to them, and they dropped it to the floor, or they crumbled it up and threw it in our faces. They screamed like they were going to be, you know, melting, I'm melting, and ran into the meeting. I had people hiss at me and scream at me that they didn't want it. And these were mayors, city council people on boards and commissions who absolutely refused to even touch this flyer. They were afraid that, you know, some bad thing would attach itself to them if they knew anything about the reality of the truth of what One Bay Area is.
So again, that was going on back in 2011, and it's still going on today. And that is what this meeting, I'll bring it back here. So the Bridge to Our Future meeting, visualizing outcomes, November 14th through the 16th. Tuesday, November 14th from 5 to 7 at the Grand Rapids PS University. I don't know. Let me know. Public school. Grand Rapids Public School. University? I don't know if that's it. I'm sorry. I should know. But that is the meeting specifically for Grand Rapids. I didn't get to share everything that I wanted to share, of course. There is this, I wanted to share one more thing. I will do another video because I have too much here that I would like to share with you, and I'm not going to be able to today, but this is the Grand Rapids Climate Resiliency Report. So I will do another video and I will share this and more into the ULEZ and the low traffic zones, neighborhoods, low traffic neighborhoods and all that, because that's all what Grand Rapids is planning. It's being implemented there. And so let's see in detail what's going on there and why people are upset. But this plan, the Grand Rapids Climate Resiliency Report, was heavily influenced, and it will tell you this, by this individual right here, Dr. Harris Ali Basic. I'm sure that's not how you say it, but associate professor and the public administration program coordinator at the University of West Florida. This doctor brings 27 years of expertise and experience to the public sector, including working for the United Nations mission, NATO, the Office of High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sorry, I know that was where the conflicts were, which is very suspicious to me. In Grand Rapids, he directed energy sustainability, legislative affairs, and climate resilience policies and programs for Grand Rapids, the second largest city in Michigan. He implemented resilience strategies resulting in significantly reduced energy usage and cost, and spurring significant renewable energy investments and the development of a climate resilience plan for the region. In 2022, he served as the Fulbright Project Specialist in the Republic of Kosovo's Prime Minister Office of Strategic Planning, where he completed the project of National Development Strategy and National Energy Strategy aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So there's no conspiracy there. Well, there is a conspiracy, but it's not a theory, okay? These people that have created the plans are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so we need to know what those goals are and what they really mean. If you are interested in that, then you're in the right spot, because that's pretty much my channel, is finding where these plans are being implemented, how they're being implemented, and trying to expose it, because we need to know who the true power is, and that it's this very sneaky power. So again, I didn't get to everything I want. Please check the description. I have several videos that you should check out with the Rosa, Koire, being at that Bay Area meeting and Delphing and all that. I will have it linked below so you can watch it for yourself. I will do part 3, absolutely, because I want to get into that climate resiliency report. I went through all of it and highlighted all of it, but I wasn't able to get to it, and the video is already over 2 hours long, and so I'm sorry that I didn't get to everything. I hope you get a general idea of what the meeting entails, and I will be there. I will be going to that meeting, and I've never been to a visioning master plan meeting, but since I've seen some of what's going on with the dam hydro meetings, like that's Delphi technique is being used there, so I have some idea. But anyway, please stay tuned for part 3. I hope, again, that you learned something. Let me know what you think about the 15-minute city idea, and, what you think about the United Nations. I will see you on Monday for the video on the hydro facilities here in Michigan, but also no matter where you are, there is a war on dams. And so please join me 10 a.m. on Monday while we talk about that war on dams and how it relates to the war on water that's happening with the United Nations Decade of Water. So thanks for hanging out. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Love you all. Peace.